Anime villains are often painted as the bad guys, the ones who want to destroy the world. But what if I told you that some of these so-called villains weren't entirely wrong? That if, deep down, they had a point? That's right. Today we're flipping the script and counting down 10 anime villains who were secretly right all along. Get comfortable, because I'm about to absolutely blow your mind. At number 10, we have Light Yagami. And this is an easy one. The guy who thought he could solve the world's problems with a magic notebook. Light Yagami, aka Kira, wanted to create a utopia by eliminating criminals. And honestly, his heart was in the right place. At least, at first. Think about it. Crime rates dropped, wars stopped, and the world became a safer place. As long as you didn't jaywalk. Sure, Light's methods were extreme, and let's not forget the whole I'm a god thing, but his goal wasn't entirely wrong. The real question is, was he a villain, or just a guy who took justice way too far? Either way, Light makes us wonder if the ends really do justify the means. Light's downfall wasn't his goal, it was his ego. He started with good intentions, but became drunk on power, believing he was the only one capable of judging right from wrong. And that's where he lost us. Still, you have to admit, the world was better off, for a little while at least. Light's story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the slippery slope of playing God. And let's not forget the irony. The very tool he used to cleanse the world, the Death Note, ended up corrupting him completely. In the end, Light's tragedy isn't just his death. It's the realization that his dream of a perfect world was doomed from the start. Because no matter how many criminals he eliminated, he could never eliminate the darkness within himself. Lelouch is the ultimate villain who's actually the hero character. Sure, he manipulated people, started wars, and basically played 4D chess with the world. But his end goal was peace. The Zero Requiem, his plan to become the world's enemy so humanity could unite against him, was both brilliant and heartbreaking. Lelouch's methods were questionable, but his intentions were pure. He wanted to create a better world, even if it meant sacrificing himself. And let's be real, the world he lived in was a mess. Corrupt governments, oppressive empires, and a whole lot of suffering. Lelouch didn't just want to fix it, he wanted to burn it down and start over. And honestly, can we blame him? What makes Lelouch so compelling is that he was not just a villain or a hero. He's both. He's a tragic figure who carries the weight of the world on his shoulders. And his story forces us to ask, how far would you go to achieve peace? At number 8, we have Eren Yeager. Okay, hear me out here. His methods weren't exactly pretty, but here's the thing. Eren wasn't entirely wrong. The world of Attack on Titan is brutal, and humanity's enemies aren't just the Titans, they're other humans. Eren's decision to activate the rumbling and wipe out most of humanity was extreme, but it came from a place of desperation. He wanted to protect his friends and his home, and in a world where peace seemed impossible, he chose the nuclear option. Was it the right choice? Debatable. But was his reasoning understandable? Absolutely. What makes Eren's story so haunting is how it mirrors real-world conflicts. He's a product of his environment, shaped by centuries of hatred and violence. And while his actions are unforgivable, they force us to confront uncomfortable truths about cycles of revenge, and the cost of freedom. But let's not forget the complexity of Eren's character. He's not just a villain or a hero. He's a deeply flawed human being. His love for his friends, his hatred for his enemies, and his overwhelming desire for freedom make him one of the most compelling characters in anime. And his final moments, where he admits he didn't want to die but saw no other way, are heartbreaking. In the end, Eren's story is a tragedy. He became the very thing he swore to destroy. And his dream of freedom came at a cost too great to bear. But if we're talking about his motive, Eren was right all along. But the execution? Not so much. At number 7, we have Nagato from Naruto. Pain is one of those villains who makes you go, wait, maybe he's got a good point. His goal was to create peace by making the world understand pain. Sounds harsh, but let's break it down. Pain grew up in a war-torn world, where suffering was the norm. He believed that only by experiencing pain could people truly understand each other and stop fighting. And honestly, he wasn't entirely wrong. His methods were extreme. Destroying a village is a bit much, but his philosophy was rooted in a desire for peace. What makes Pain so compelling is that he wasn't just spouting nonsense. He had a plan. By using fear and pain as tools, he wanted to force the world into a state of mutual understanding. It was a brutal approach, but it's not entirely without merit. After all, history has shown that sometimes it takes a catastrophic event to bring about lasting change. And let's not forget his argument about the cycle of hatred. Pain pointed out that as long as people seek revenge, the cycle of violence will never end. It's a harsh truth, but one that's hard to argue with. In a world where wars are fought over old grudges, Pain's message is uncomfortably relevant. So, while his methods were villainous, his goal, to break the cycle of hatred and create a lasting peace, wasn't entirely wrong. Pain reminds us that sometimes the line between right and wrong isn't as clear as we'd like to think. Coming up next, we have Father, the main antagonist of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Father wanted to become a god by absorbing the power of the world's alchemy. Sounds villainous, right? But let's look at his reasoning. Father was created by humans as a tool, and he spent centuries trying to understand his purpose. His desire for godhood wasn't just about power. It was about transcending his limitations and achieving true freedom. And honestly, can we blame him for wanting to break free from the chains of his creation? What makes Father so compelling is that he wasn't just evil for the sake of being evil. He had a clear goal: to rid himself of human flaws and become perfect. His plan to use the Philosopher's Stone to achieve this was extreme, but it was rooted in a desire to escape the limitations of his existence. And let's not forget his critique of humanity. Father saw humans as weak, flawed, and driven by base desires. While his methods were extreme, his observations about human nature weren't entirely wrong. After all, humans are capable of both great good and great evil. And Father's desire to rise above that duality is something we can all understand. So, while his actions were undeniably villainous, his goal, to transcend his limitations and achieve perfection, wasn't entirely wrong. Father reminds us that even the most monstrous villains can have a point. Up next, we have Stain from My Hero Academia. And boy, is he a good pick for this category. Stain is the kind of guy who makes us question everything we thought we knew about heroes. His goal was to purge the hero world of corruption. And honestly, he had a good point. A damn good one, too. In a society where heroes are more concerned with fame and money than actually helping people, Stain's crusade against fake heroes was kind of refreshing. Sure, his methods were violent and extreme, but his message resonated with a lot of people, including some of the series' heroes. Stain isn't just a mindless killer. He had a clear vision of what a true hero should be. Someone who selflessly protects others, no matter the cost. And let's be real, the hero society in My Hero Academia was far from perfect. Heroes were treated like celebrities, and many of them cared more about their image than actually saving lives. Stain's actions forced the hero world to confront its flaws. After his rampage, heroes started taking their roles more seriously, and the public began to question the system. In a way, Stain achieved his goal. He exposed the corruption in the hero world and inspired change. So, while his methods were villainous, his message, that heroes should be selfless and dedicated to justice, wasn't entirely wrong. Stain is that guy for sure. Shogo Makishima is the kind of villain who makes you question the system. In a world where people's mental states are constantly monitored and controlled, Makishima fought for free will. His methods were brutal, but his goal was to expose the flaws in the Sibyl system and give people the freedom to think for themselves. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. The Sibyl system was oppressive and dehumanizing, reducing people to numbers and stripping them of their individuality. He had a clear vision of a world where people could make their own choices, free from the control of an all-seeing AI. His actions forced the characters and the audience to confront the dangers of sacrificing freedom for security. Makishima's critique of the Sibyl system is that a society ruled by an algorithm, no matter how efficient, lacks the humanity needed to truly understand justice. His rebellion, while extreme, highlighted the flaws in a system that valued order over individuality. So, while his methods were villainous, his goal, to expose the flaws in the Sibyl system and fight for free will, wasn't entirely wrong. Makishima is one of those villains who challenged the status quo, and was right to do so. Coming in at number 3 is Doffy from One Piece. Doflamingo is one of the most charismatic villains in One Piece. And while he's definitely a bad guy, his backstory makes you understand where he's coming from. Born into a world of privilege and then cast out, Doflamingo learned early on that the world is cruel and unfair. His goal was to tear down the existing order and create a new one where he was in control. And while his methods were ruthless, his desire to challenge the status quo wasn't entirely wrong. So yes, his ideal world had him at the apex. His idea was right. His methods could use a bit more work, but let's give Doflamingo his due. At number 2, we move you to Evangelion. Gendo Ikari is the kind of guy you love to hate, but his actions are driven by a desire to reunite with his wife, Yui. Sure, his methods are questionable, to say the least, but his goal is deeply human. Gendo's willingness to sacrifice everything for the person he loves makes him a tragic figure. He's not a traditional villain, but his actions have far-reaching consequences. And while we can't condone his choices, we can understand them. Another villain who had the right idea all along. Daesum isn't your typical villain. He's an arbiter who judges souls in the afterlife. His job is to decide whether souls are reincarnated or sent to the void. And while his methods seem cold and impersonal, they are rooted in a sense of justice. Daesum's role forces us to confront difficult questions about morality, judgment, and the value of human life. And while his decisions aren't always fair, they're a reflection of the complexities of human nature. And there you have it. 10 anime villains who were secretly right all along. So, which villain do you think was the most justified? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more anime content. Until next time.